Just uncovered another stunning inconsistency in the genealogies of the Bible that wouldn't have made sense to me if I hadn't looked at the earlier ones in Genesis. There are parallel genealogies, two different creations and then two different lines of descent from them by two different gods. And these two different gods interfere with human fertility in several instances, particularly with the patriarchs, where you have Rebecca and Sarah and Leah and Rachel all having fertility problems at one time or another. And in Sarah's case, the gods themselves step in. Both of them, the Elohim, God version, or the Yahweh, possibly the Lord / even Baal version, say that I'm going to come to you and you're going to have a child. So both of them genetically appear to be the father of Isaac. And she's courted by both, and when she gives birth, it could mean it's not that clear which way things are going. And then this carries on into the next generation, where Rebecca has twins, but they are after a period of infertility, which is stopped by Yahweh. So these gods continually interfere with the lineage and keep putting themselves back into it over time, that this gets extremely dramatic when you get to the Gospels, because there's a genealogy at the beginning of Matthew which does not match with the genealogy given in Luke 3:23. Two of Josephs are given with two different fathers, which, when you trace them back, echoes all the way back through time. In one case, as far back as Adam. So even when you go from Shem to Abraham, there's one extra generation put in. So when you compare the lineage in Luke to the lineage in Genesis, for the people who descend from Shem to Abraham, they don't quite match either. So the one genealogy that you got in Genesis, and didn't appear to be twinned, actually gets twinned when you get to the New Testament. This gives two different lines of descent with many differences between them, particularly between Abraham and Jesus, and echoes the sibling rivalry that's such a huge theme in the early chapter of the Bible in Genesis, and culminates, as I could see it, with two differing accounts of the life of Jesus and how he got on the earth and what he did when he got there, how he was born and where he was born and what he did when he was practicing in his ministry. So in the end, you actually have, in effect, two Jesuses. So there's a competition between Elohim and Yahweh, or whatever other version he is, which runs all the way through, not just from Genesis, but through the whole succeeding lineage all the way down to the New Testament. Even in Jesus' name, which says that he was prophesied to be called Emmanuel, which would be like Elohim, the same suffix that all the other words connected with Elohim have. But then he's not called that, he's called Yahushua, or it sounds a little bit more like a version of Yahweh, and you have the whole conflict playing out once again. I particularly was stunned by the rereading of the story of Abraham and Sarah, and how the gods intervene in her conception, and then it can't be just coincidence, because there's so many near echoes, almost the same story being told over and over and over again. And this ties right back to the beginning question of who the father of Cain was, because the deities interfere with Eve's children as well. One of them comes from Elohim, and I would see that since Seth comes from Elohim, I would think that, once again, it looks like Cain comes from Yahweh, or whatever alias that god goes under. And this runs everywhere through the Bible. It's essentially a dual story, which explains why people still fight so much over who the God really is, trying to say there's only one, when there's at least two versions of one, if not two, that are closely related, having a sort of sibling rivalry down through the story.